Great. Thanks, Randy. Thanks, Ali. And thanks, everybody, for having us. We're really excited to be here to talk about some of the things we're working on and also just kind of go over some of the things we've discussed in the past and the things that might be useful to your operations at the local level and regional level. Again, we're always here to help at the Storm Prediction Center with your IDSS operations. So the more we can do to work together on these things, I think the better off we'll all be. So I gave the similar talk last week to Southern Region, and I started off with this graphic here, which hopefully will pop in. There it pops in. It was last week, March 16th, when I gave it. And so if you're not familiar with this graphic, we have a severe weather outlooks at a glance. That the link is at the bottom there. It's a public link. Just a really nice way to see kind of our outlooks for the next 8 days, and a good kind of sharing for social media. But what I really wanted to hit at on this particular graphic was the introduction of these 15% areas in the extended. I'm sure many of you saw those, on day 8, even day 7, day 6, and historically we started issuing the 15% in 2015, and we really kind of limited the ones, especially when you get further in the extended, to these outbreak type scenarios. But I think it's that the times are changing, and we've heard from many people on this call and many others across the Weather Service and our partners that it's time to start being a little bit more aggressive during those extended forecast time periods, especially when the guidance is clear that there's going to be at least a potential for organized convection. So if you start seeing these more often, I think the good reminder is the 15 that shows up. It might not necessarily mean that the outbreak is coming, but it's a kind of a heads up that there is potential, and we have confidence in at least organized severe weather by the time we get down to day 1. Whether it stays at 15 and becomes a slight risk in the end, or whether or not it maybe up to a 30% and then eventually becomes an outbreak type situation. That's kind of a change in philosophy. So if you're hearing from your media, for your EM partners, it's important to remind them that really that 15% is a heads up that there's a potential for organized severe weather, and that doesn't necessarily mean an outbreak's coming. The best tool to discern that is the text, right? So if the forecasters start using the language that starts, which you saw if you looked at the outlooks for this past event, regional outbreak, significant severe weather, and you start seeing those 30% contours also in the extended, that's really the more key that an outbreak is possible. So hopefully everybody is excited about that. I think we had a lot of positive feedback that we're starting to do that more often. And in this particular case, certainly it takes a little bit of time, it looks like, to show up. So I'll try to click the things sooner than I start talking about it. In this particular case, we had a day 8 area on the Tuesday, and it did end up being a regional style outbreak. So really, it's the situation dependent. But I thought it was really important to just convey this new message that the folks can then relate to their media partners, and it really helps facilitate that messaging across the board. So I think I wanted to first start off here talking about our internal website. Thankfully, we were able to get the ICAM enabled access, so you can access this remotely, which has been a huge, huge advantage during this remote posture that we continue to operate in, and also just in the future with potential telework options for forecasters at the WFO, at the regions, to be able to look at these tools, these prototype tools that we've been developing here at the Storm Prediction Center from home, from anywhere. Look at the archive, and it gives you time to look at it on your own time. The link there is at the top. And these tools, I want to stress this, these tools are for you, right? We want feedback on them. They were specifically developed for the WFOs to really add some information from what we have here at the Storm Prediction Center. And I guess I want to take a quick step back and just introduce myself real quickly. I'm the Warning Coordination Meteorologist here. I've been in that for about a year now. And prior to that, I was a Techniques Development Meteorologist here at the Storm Prediction Center. And most of these, except for the VAD Viewer tool, are tools that I developed as a Techniques Development Meteorologist. And so I certainly welcome any feedback, ways to make these things more useful for you in operations. Really, again, they're for you. Before being a TDM, I was a forecaster at the Sterling Forecast Office. So coming here, it really, I wanted to work on things that would benefit the field the most. And so that's why I gravitated to these particular tools that we're going to talk a little bit about here today, including the severe timing guidance, the watch status graphics, and the convective outlook preview, and a new VAD display, profiler display that I think you'll really like if you get a chance to take a look at that. So let's just quickly start off with the watch status graphics. It was the first thing I developed when I came here from Sterling. I think I remember, most of the times when the watch status text would show up on my my Taco Bell at Sterling, I just clicked it off because the text graphic was just so not very useful. It had a list of counties that remained active. So you had to kind of look at it like, okay, so which counties were in it, which counties weren't in it. It just didn't make sense as a useful product at the WFO level. So I was really excited to be able to work on these graphics that I hope help you guys in the field with kind of understanding at least what we think here at the Storm Prediction Center in terms of the recommended clearing for the watches. And it really just kind of gives you that added confidence because again, you're the ones clearing the watch. So it really kind of gives you that, okay, well, SPC thinks it also, so let's go ahead and clear those counties. And when you're confronted with the page, you get this dashboard type outlook dashboard type appearance. But if you click on one of them, I don't think many maybe don't know this, but if you click on one of the graphics, it'll take you into the kind of the viewer for that particular watch. And you can click on the top through all the different status updates and kind of see how it evolved through time and when we issued them, direct links to the MDs that might be mentioned in the Outlook, GIS layers to see where you fit in with your CWA, etc. So hopefully that might also be useful. They update automatically, so no need to refresh your computer. It'll update, checks every minute, so I should get there fairly quickly. So that's all I have for the watch status, but hopefully, again, any feedback on that and how it's helpful to operations, please let us know. Next is the Outlook preview graphic. And we try to do the Outlook preview about 10 to 15 minutes prior to issuance time. And I want to stress that, again, this is for informational purposes only. By that time, when you're 10 to 15 minutes away from Outlook issuance, it's just really difficult for the forecaster to make changes. So what we stress is if you have a problem or like, if you want to discuss the Outlook, really go off the previous Outlook. So if you feel incongruent with what we have going on our previous Outlook, the time to collaborate that, and I'll show some collaboration times later in the talk, is during those times, not once this Outlook preview graphic comes out. This is really meant to give you that heads up that, hey, this is what has changed. It gives you the Outlook area, and it's just kind of a nice tool to really kind of show you what's going to happen so that you're ready to message it as soon as the Outlook comes out to your partners. There also are Zooms available that you can see there in the top right. You just click on the image and you can get a little closer look into your particular area, which can be quite useful. And so, yeah, so once the Outlook is issued, immediately it switches over to this kind of official mode, and you can toggle back and forth between the previous Outlook to kind of see what has changed as well. We do days 1 through 3 on this particular Outlook preview. Next, I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the next tool that we have. And this is just a loop here from July of last year. It's not going to play super great on GoTo or Google Meet, but that's not the point here. The point is I'm showing reflectivity with lightning data and then our categorical outlooks underneath. And so you see several things here that we all know SPC provides. We provide this kind of coverage and magnitude, intensity, to a lesser extent with our significant areas. But what's missing? And what's missing might be the one thing that everybody needs the most, and that's the timing information. SPC outlooks are full period outlooks. They run 12Z to 12Z or 1630 to 12Z, depending on the issuance time. But what's missing is that critical timing information for you and your partners so that the resources are in the right place at the right time. It's a little bit easier to adjust for magnitude changes, but not having the right people at the right time, knowing when to call people in, knowing if we need people for overtime, those are the key things that people are interested in. You know, when are the shelters need to start opening? When do we need to think about that? And that's really important. So I think the timing guidance is something we're super excited here. And again, this is stuff that is going to hopefully flow through you guys, right? Because you're the boots on the ground, working with your local and regional partners to help message these threats and the timing that might occur with them. And it's, you know, to provide that national kind of consistent timing information is very difficult to do by a single forecaster, two forecasters. So what makes this possible is the increase in kind of model skill, especially when it comes to providing that timing information. And so we want to do here is to mesh this human machine forecast as best as possible to take advantage of what the human can do and then what the guidance can do. If you're updating this every hour based off new guidance, whether it's the WAFs, whether it's the HER, whatever it is in the future, and it's a 1 hour, hourly running 4-hour window, that's just impossible for a human to do on a national scale, let alone a local scale with that many updates. It's just unreasonable to assume that that would be possible. So again, it's getting this best interface that we can get. So how do we do that? Well, what we do is we start with these 4-hour chunks. And so you can see there the 16 to 12Z, actually that's the full period forecast. And then we break them up into these kind of 4-hour chunks that run every hour. So in this particular case, you can see just these 4-hour windows where the full period outlook was broken up into smaller kind of periods. And then the storm reports that were shown there are occurring during those particular periods. So really, it's again to exploit these best attributes of the human experts and the NWP models. So an important step for that, though, is to start talking about our outlooks in a continuous probability form. So you're all very familiar on the left with our traditional hazard probabilities, which are really kind of mislabeled in a sense. You see there on the bottom left that you have the 5, 15, 30, 45. In reality, right, it's more of a continuum of probability across each of the areas. If you're right near the line, of course, you're not going to all of a sudden drop, let's say from 15 down to 5. If you're on the other side, you might be a 14 or a 13. That's not certainly communicated very well on the one on the left. So what you have to do to create these timing graphics and just to help with communication is to start talking more in a continuum or a continuous probability form. And that's what you see on the right there is just an event here with wind showing where if you're right near the line, you're going to be very close to those probabilities that you would be on either side of the line. And so I think that's an important part of the messaging. When you're messaging the hazard probabilities or the categorical to your partners, it's really messaging that, you know, the lines themselves are fuzzy in a sense. And I know everybody gets drawn to lines and move a line here, 5, 10 miles, a line there. And I understand, especially when you're talking about a categorical, that the lines sometimes can seemingly matter to some people. But again, it should be thought of more as a continuum, and we're working hard to try to help message that better. And I think the timing guidance is kind of that first step to get there. And I think another thing I like to point out is kind of how we arrive at the categorical outlooks here. And many of you may know this, but I think it's important to just as a reminder that, you know, this science behind the SPC outlooks and how they're verified is really in the hazard probabilities. And so those are tuned, right, to capture, you know, in a reliable sense, the different probabilities that you might get based off the occurrence that ends up happening. And so that's the key, is that's kind of the science, and then you run it through this probability to category table, and depending on where you fall at any given point, you end up with the categorical outlook that we're of course all very familiar with, and it's certainly the primary messaging tool that we use across the Weather Service to really get, you know, the message across. And so again, it's the science, and then to a lesser extent, you know, there's certainly science in the categorical, but it's a big messaging part of the graphic and kind of summing all those three hazards into one graphic. So I always like to point that out when we're talking about moving lines a few miles or, you know, capturing certain things, that then requires, of course, to change back into the science. Like, okay, so which hazard are we talking about? Is it the tornado? Is it both? Is it all three? And so that's really a kind of a key point to make talking about this conversion here. And of course, if you do the continuous probabilities and you do the same thing, you get the same answer, right? Because they're just the breaks are the same. So I won't dwell on that, but you get the same answer. So I'll take a brief break here from the presentation. This is what the timing guidance page looks like, but I thought I'd just pull it up here really quickly. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. But I have it all up and ready to go. So this is from the December 15th event from last year that you're all certainly very familiar with in Central Region. And I just kind of walk through here. It does update a little bit slow, it looks like on GoTo, so I won't spend too much time. But this is the wind probabilities for that particular day looping through time. It's going much faster on my computer here, but that's okay. So you have access to the time series information on the left, where you can pull up these really neat time series graphics for all the gridded points that are within the marginal risk area. And you can also enter, there's a place to enter like a city. I won't do it because of the time delay here. But you can see here that there are 4 hour, every hour running probabilities through time. You can plot the LSRs on there to go back and look at archive as well. The archive goes back very far, so you can really go back and look at cases from your area. And we love feedback. So the bottom left there, you'll see a feedback spot. Please, if you have feedback on this, we are showing this to you so that before we get further, so that we can get feedback. Again, the dissemination of this has to come through you guys. So we really want the feedback so that we can make this as strong as possible as we take this to the next level through time. I do want to make sure to mention and thank Andy Just for making these available in AWIPS. You'll see there's a link on that page to where you can find the information to insert it into AWIPS there at the bottom there. So again, thanks Andy for doing that. We certainly really appreciate your work on that. And then there's also a shortcut keyboard. And I think some of these graphics get missed because they're not necessarily shown there. So there's things like the earliest reasonable time of slight risk probabilities, the onset of the max probability. You can see there at the top by using a keyboard shortcut, kind of some higher level graphics that could be really useful for operations to kind of determine when the earliest reasonable time is. I'll flip back quickly to our PowerPoint here and just want to show a couple cases from your guys' area from last year. Once it clicks in, first one will be the December 10th event. Of course, this was a significant event across much of the area. So here's some time series graphics for that particular event. And then we have the vertical line showing the earliest reasonable time of the slight risk or the severe weather risk in this case, which is drawn off the slight. The slight typically, as you probably know or maybe kind of seem to know, that's really kind of an indicator of that watch possible thinking. So I always tell people that if you are in a marginal and you're thinking a watch, well, that might be a good time to reach out to us here at the Storm Prediction Center, because the watch is in our minds might be a little less likely with that marginal. And once we start seeing a slight, then you're starting to think of a watch as certainly possible. And certainly higher than that, then a watch becomes much more likely in this case. So let me kind of go in, and I just want to point out the Mayfield, the bottom right there. We all know what happened with this particular long track supercell, so I won't dwell on this image. But I do want to just kind of show a little verification of that time series graphic. So I annotated on there the tornado watch period, and then the time of the Mayfield impact is showing that little small red bar, and then the entire EF4 tornado time frame is shown there as well. So certainly in this particular case, the timing guidance did quite well, and it usually does in these synoptically driven types of events that are really more well predicted. You might expect that in the summer during pulse convection that it's going to struggle to do as well. The guidance isn't going to have all the storms in the same location, and so the probabilities are going to be much less. And I do want to point out that I think that these time series graphics offer a really good opportunity for at the local level to annotate them with things like intense tornadoes possible during this portion. And then maybe in the second portion, widespread damaging winds possible with the line of storms that moves through. I think that's a great opportunity to kind of add value to these graphics. And I do want to point out that you'll see that at the top there's a city and a state, whereas on the page you only get the lat lon. But that's changing soon. So the CWA graphics that you're familiar with us, you'll have access to graphics like this for all the cities in your CWA, and hopefully we'll have that available on that website very soon, so that you don't have to cover over that lat lon and put a city on it. You can use those graphics just right away. Our idea, and again, we want to make this as easy as possible for you to just share them with your partners. And please feel free to share and pass back any feedback that you have on this timing graphics. And I'll just kind of quickly show a different case with a wind case. We're all familiar with the super derecho from 2020, and just kind of show the impact that you can have by changing the probability. So this was the 13Z outlook here. This is just a kind of a earliest reasonable isochrones there, showing kind of the time frame and a couple selected cities where the severe weather risk is shown for the time frame for those. And then with our update, you can see how that changed as we introduced the moderate area for that particular day, and with how the radar changed based off that particular day. So really some interesting graphics, and hopefully, again, they're useful for you and your partners. And please pass the feedback along. I wanted to jump in next to some new graphics that we're going to be having available very soon. You're all familiar with these CWA regional FEMA graphics that we have to help communicate the hazards. And here's the one that I shared with Paducah on the December 10th event prior to the event. And I shared this with all the offices that were in the moderate area. We shared these graphics with them. We now have, in addition to the categorical, we now have the individual hazards available in the same exact form, so that they don't move around or anything. You can share them in a nice 4-panel or however you want to do. So these are the graphics that I shared with Paducah on the December 10th case, and all the other surrounding WFOs as well that were impacted. So this is coming very soon, and we can't wait to get you guys to have this these outlooks for you available for your messaging purposes. And then we also have available for those from Central Region as well. These are some graphics I shared with the Central Region that just show the Central Region offices area, and then also with the same hazard graphics. And even more exciting, because we had some of those severe graphics, is we didn't have fire. So this is actually today's and tomorrow's outlook. There's not a big area or anything, but like a couple elevated areas sneaking into some Central Region offices for today and tomorrow. So yeah, fire weather as well will be available at the local level and at the regional level and national. So wherever you want to use the graphics you might want to use. There's the CWA, for example, for Rapid City and for Dodge City for tomorrow. And then just I wanted to kind of focus on a couple last things. I know the time is always going to be short, and some things that we're focusing on, especially during 22. I'll start with the second one. Really is kind of this additional mesoanalysis support, providing kind of the larger scale MDs, but then breaking them down into kind of the smaller meso-beta areas that are really to kind of address that watch to kind of a warning time frame, and to kind of capture these corridors of additional threat that can hopefully help your operations. We have gotten a lot of really positive feedback. For example, for that December 10th event, where we had more MDs issued on that December 10th event than we've ever had for any event. And that second place was the April 27th event, 2011. So certainly we've been hitting this very hard, and we're also exploring some chat options and some ways to help increase the information flow between our offices. And kind of the idea here is if we're thinking things that may happen or can provide additional input, it's good for us to try to reach out and provide that information to you so that you can help kind of use those to help help with your warning operations and help understand how things might evolve through time. It's that evolution of the severe threat that we're really trying to hit at as best as possible. We're also doing a conditional intensity estimates experiment. And so certainly we're all familiar with the SPC significant area. It's a 10% probability of significant hazards, whether it's tornado, wind, or hail. And the idea there, though, is that really is somewhat limiting in terms of providing additional information on the significance of the hazards. Certainly, you might have a situation along a dry line where the probability of thunderstorms are severe is like 5%. That might not meet the significant threshold, but you might, if storms were to fire, you might have a significant probability, a significant chance of significant tornadoes, for example, or something like that. So we're exploring the idea of adding these single hatched, double hatched areas so that maybe eventually somewhere a triple hatched area to kind of show the historic nature of an outbreak. And again, the idea is that, and I'm going to kind of skip through this graphic quickly and go to the next graphic because that's where the point really is that the likelihood of an EF3 or stronger tornado really increases exponentially as the SPC forecasts kind of reach that higher thresholds up to the high risk territory. So it's really trying to capture more of those kind of significant events with a kind of a double hatched area, and then also allowing for some more flexibility with the single hatch as well. And so why do this? Well, I'm sure we all know that the majority of tornadoes are relatively weak, right? Well over 90% of them are EF2 or are lower. And then there's a small percentage, very small percentage, 5% or more, 5% or so, sorry, that are stronger. But it's those strong ones that really are what we have to worry about in terms of fatalities, as you can see on the right there. 86% of these in this period here were EF3 are higher. And so those are the ones that we need to make sure that we're improving the estimates of the intensity and the coverage of these types of events as best as possible. And we do this to help drive things like we call this quantitative IDSS, which is, I think, the next wave of IDSS is taking information like the metadata at the ground, hospital exposure, schools, mobile homes, and then overlaying the meteorological information on that to determine, okay, what is the exposure to these types of things. And it's complicated. You could start off easy by just having the location, but things like time. So are people at school during the day but not at night? So if the storms are coming through overnight, maybe the exposure is less. Office buildings, or maybe people are sheltering in the schools overnight. So again, these get quite complex, but you got to start somewhere. And that really provides additional information to the context of the event at the local level, the regional level, and the national level. So this is just a mock-up graphic here that we have for the April 27th, 2011 event, and we're using a historic PDF here. So this is like a triple hatched area where you can see really it's this once every 15 or 20 year type of event, and this particular data release showing that this historic outbreak and how the relative threat to society and the exposure are easily discernible based off the metadata and the things that are kind of underlying the meteorological information. So it's kind of a one-stop graphic that can work really well. Lastly, I just want to hit on things that I know is really important to us here at the Storm Prediction Center and also to you in the field. It's the idea of collaboration. Really, we can't do this without you. And again, we really value that kind of partnership with the field and with the regions as well. So as you might expect, collaboration requests continue to increase at the Storm Prediction Center. And that's certainly through time as IDSS has continued to increase. And that calls or chats with concerns or questions regarding the outlook, the previous outlook especially, right? And the differences in meteorological assessment are encouraged. Really, let's hash this out and let's work together to do that. And certainly prefers concise communication. I'm sure on your end also, you're busy, we're all busy. So let's keep that as concise as possible. And then, prior coordination with the surrounding WFOs is helpful. If you want to make changes versus, your WFO next to you doesn't want to, then it makes things really challenging sometimes if to hash that out at the last minute, if there's a lot of disagreement between neighboring WFOs. And of course, I think we all can agree that effective collaboration can improve the final product. And so really, that's something that we really want to stress here, that we're all a team here. This is one National Weather Service, And we're here to make the best severe weather forecasts and products as possible, all the way from the outlooks down to the MDs, to the watches, and then down to the warnings that you guys are issuing. And I'm not going to spend time going through the outlet collaboration time frame. If I can maybe send out a link if you don't have it, or maybe someone from Central Region can share that with those on the call, because there's just too much information to go through here. But really, it's just focus on your concerns and your reasoning. And these are the best times. It doesn't mean you can't call or chat at other times, but these are just the preferred times. And I think it's important to stress that there's a reason for that, because the forecaster might be working on a different day. So the forecaster comes in at night, they might be doing day 2 first, and then day 3, and then days 4 through 8. And so you might have had time to digest the information for day 3, but that forecaster is still working on day 2. And so these times are really set up that best optimize our forecasters having looked at the data and having the model data available for the coordination to go as well as possible, so that we don't have to say, oh, can we chat you back later? So that's really why these times are selected. And with that, I know I'm probably a couple minutes over. I'm sorry about that. Please, if you have any questions at any time, contact Bill or I. We're happy to take calls or questions and feedback. We really, again, just an open line of communication, I think, will serve us all best. So thank you. Thanks for Central Region for having us, and thanks everybody for listening.